If you don't know how to price your art, you're in the right place. So usually when a client contacts you, one of the first things that you need to have in mind is that working out a quote with an hourly rate is a bad idea, because the problem is that you're only having in mind the time that it takes you to make the illustration, but it's also very important to think about the usage. So basically, the more usage that it's going to have, the more you should charge. So for instance, if the illustration is seen in the whole US and Asia, in bus banners and social media, the illustration is going to be much more expensive because it's going to be seen more, and therefore the client will get more benefits from it. But if the illustration is seen in a magazine for 3 months, you won't be able to charge as much. So basically the usage is even more important than the time it takes you to do the illustration. So the use of the illustration is basically the license that you're giving to the client. So I'll explain it again. The license is the right to use the illustration that you're giving to the client. And there's a few things that you should have in mind. First of all, is it going to be exclusive or non-exclusive? If it's exclusive, it means that only that client will be able to use it for commercial use. But as the creator that you are, you will still retain the copyright. Non-exclusive means that you can sell it to multiple clients. So for example, if you sell some prints in Society 6, you could also sell them in another platform, such as Redbubble, because you're giving a non-exclusive license. Another important thing to have in mind is the territory. So as I've said before, if the illustration is going to be seen in multiple countries, you will charge more than if it's used locally. Duration, that's also important. Most big clients will usually ask you for a perpetual license, which is not the best because it means that you're basically giving them the rights to use it forever. But personally, I've accepted those terms because I really like the project and it was worth it for me. But there's always space for negotiation, and sometimes you can get a shorter license. And the last thing that you should have in mind is the actual usage. So is it going to be used as a book cover, product packaging, in a magazine, in online ads? So remember, the more visibility, the more you can charge. Also, be careful with self-sabotage. So one of the biggest mistakes that I did was to overprice quotes. Because I was too scared of underpricing and of the project itself, I quoted far too much and obviously didn't get the projects. It also takes some trial and error, and over time, you get the hang of it. What I always have in mind though, is that it's so important that you feel comfortable with the price that you're giving, because otherwise you might put too much pressure on yourself or not enjoy the project because you're not getting enough money for it. Also, another thing is that you can charge more if it's a tight deadline. So if they only give you a few days to do the work, you can charge more for the inconvenience, because usually when this happens, you have to prioritize that project and do intense work, which is sometimes very hard to do. Another situation where you can charge more is when there's more revisions than expected or agreed. So if you've done multiple sketches and the creative direction is very confusing and you feel that you're doing a lot more work for what they are paying you for, it's completely fair and normal to ask for more money. Also, don't be too scared when you're giving a fixed quote, because usually there's space for negotiations. And last but not least, I'm gonna leave you a link of a website that's been really useful for me, where other creators share what they've earned with illustration projects. The website is called Litebox. If after all of this you're still feeling lost, I recommend you joining the AOI, the Association of Illustrators. When I started, I joined for a year and I found it very useful. There's a lot of resources and you can ask them for advice. So I hope you enjoyed my first YouTube video. And if you want, you can leave in the comments what you found most useful and if there's anything else that you'd like to know about the illustration business. Thank you so much.